Hello, I'm Mary Ito, and welcome to the Cram Podcast. Now, this might be a provocative question for you, but it is one that more and more people are thinking about. Would you have sex with a robot? Now, that idea might sound bizarre, but it is not to a growing number of people. That's according to one U.S. poll conducted in 2020 that found 1 in 5 Americans would consider having sex with a robot. And as robots become more sophisticated and human-like, well, does that idea seem more plausible? Will we care about robots? Will we love them? And will they love us? These are questions that I bet Neil McArthur thinks about. He specializes in sexual ethics and AI as a professor of philosophy and director of the Center for Professional and Applied Ethics at the University of Manitoba. And he joins us. Hi, Neil.
Hi, Mary. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. Well, first off, I have to ask, are you just like the coolest guy, the most sought after guy on campus?
I don't know about that. I think some people think it's a little weird what I do. Some people think it's cool. Some people think it's weird. There's probably about an even split. So,
yeah, I guess it could be divisive.
It is divisive.
Depending on where you fall. Well, how did you get interested in the first place on AI and sexuality and sex?
Well, I mean, I think it's sort of a convergence. I think I've always been a bit of a tech nerd, and I've always liked the latest technology and tried to follow it. And the ethics of sex has been a long-term research interest of mine. And so I just sort of watched these things coming together. And it was at the time, I mean, I started working on this topic about 10 years ago. And at the time, nobody was very interested in it. Although, I mean, from an academic perspective, people weren't very interested in it and weren't writing about it. Although from a media perspective, I mean, there were so many movies and TV shows and media articles about this. And it just seemed like there was a divide where there was this huge public interest. And I could see it from my students, too. When I started talking about this in class, they immediately responded. And yet no academics had really thought seriously about it. So I just sort of thought, well, this is an open net.
Yeah. And now there's a cool term that you use, digisexuality. Is that actually a term that you came up with?
Yeah. I mean, it's kicked around in various, I think it's appeared in various things, but my research partner, Marky Twist, and I tried to give it a more specific use and more specific definition. I mean, we use it to refer to all sorts of technologies that are used for sex or for intimate relationships. But then we also use it in a very specific sense to talk about a new sexual identity. So that's something maybe we could get into later. But the basic idea is that there are people who for whom technology is an essential part of their sexual identity.
So when you say an essential part, does that mean it could be an add-on? It's not necessarily that they prefer that over human relations.
Well, to be a true digisexual, I think it is a necessary part. So there may be a human involved or there may not be. And I think you can look at it in a similarly or an analogous way to other sorts of sexual identities where, for instance, with kink, there are many people who experiment with kink or who practice kink of various kinds to a certain degree. And then there are people who consider themselves kinky, which is to say that I think one way to look at it is if you were to prevent them from having this kind of experience, would they feel that something had been taken away from them that was important to them? So for a person who truly identifies as kinky, if they found out that they were not allowed to engage in that sort of sexual activity ever again, they would feel that as a loss to them and to their identity. And so for digisexuals, it's the same thing. If you were to remove technology from, if we went into some state where all our technology was lost or something stopped working, they would feel a real sense of loss and they would feel that something had been taken away from them.
And I mean, I'm sure you probably keep tabs on, what's going on and how people feel about it and what they're using. I'm curious to know, like in the last, I don't know, you said 10 years, you've been really looking at this. Like what's happened with this field, the interest in, whether it's sex robots using AI for, sexual means, whatever, like what's been going on in the last decade?
It's been a long 10 years. I think 10 years ago, a couple of things. One is that everybody was very focused on robotics, including me, and including actually Sam Altman and the folks at OpenAI. At that time, In the last, up until about a few years ago, these companies were actually robotics companies. And so I think people imagined, partly because of what we saw in the movies, that if people were going to have intimate relationships, it was going to be with some sort of humanoid robot. And I think we thought that technology might develop quite quickly. And in fact, it developed quite slowly. So it turns out it's very hard to get robots. I mean, this is not just sex robots, but robotics in general has been moving more slowly than we thought 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago, we all thought it was going to take off. In fact, it's proven very hard, to get robots to move around like humans. Humans are really tricky people creatures from a skeletal, muscular perspective. And then skin turns out to be really, really hard to create. So if you want any kind of companion robot, having any kind of skin that doesn't just feel like, thick silicone is really difficult. But at the same time, suddenly, unbeknownst to most of us until about 18 months ago, there were huge advances happening in the field of AI. And I think two things that we didn't realize 10 years ago have proven in the last couple of years to be absolutely true. Is one, that AI is developing very quickly and becoming very sophisticated and becoming very socially sophisticated. That is to say, it is not just solving problems and generating text, but actually showing itself to have something like a personality, or it can pretend to have something like a personality. I think the other thing we've realized in the last couple of years is that people are actually maybe less interested in robots and in physically embodied beings than they are in having a creature that they can, some kind of entity that they can interact with in an intimate way, even if it's just a chatbot, even if it's just something on their phone. I don't think any of us realized that was something that people were as interested in as they've suddenly proven to be.
Yeah, no, I know. So were you yourself taken aback by that people would be interested not necessarily in a physical thing like a robot itself, but in actually like the AI itself, and chatting with an AI that has personality and can talk back and socialize with you?
Absolutely. I think the only sort of premonition we had of this is the movie Her, where I think I give the filmmakers tons of credit for being genuine sort of visionaries in realizing this. I think that was the first glimpse people had of what kind of relationship you could have with just a disembodied AI, because I think it would have, previous to that, been quite hard for a lot of us to imagine.
Just before we get into all that, I wanted to kind of step back and look at AI and how we can use it in our social life, social relationships, such as dating. Because I came across an article that you read, and it was using AI and dating. Now, I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people, young and old, they use dating apps, and they're really like, I tend to hear more negative than anything about these apps. They try it for a while, and then they just get tired of it, and they're like fed up, and they go, you know what? I'm tired of being lied to. People exaggerate. There's possibility of scamming. There's safety issues, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's kind of heartless because you either pass or fail on it. So like, why do you think, because I remember in this article you said that you actually thought it was exciting to be single and online at this time?
Yeah, I should say, I actually wrote two articles. One is about how bad potentially AI can be for online dating. I think because it's going to amplify some of the things you were just talking about. And I think you rightly point out, which is that there's a lot of fraud, and there's a lot of scammers, and there's a lot of fake profiles. And AI is really going to amp that up. And I really hope the technology companies figure out better ways to deal with that, because they've been pretty slow. But I do absolutely believe that there's huge potential for AI to help us with dating in a number of different ways. One is, I think that one of the things people stress over is their profiles and their profile photos, and I think AI can help us a lot with that. I mean, some of us are very good at writing, and some of us are very good at taking pictures, or our friends are very good at taking pictures. A lot of us aren't, and so I think AI can help with that. I think that if you think about sort of in a more visionary way, maybe one of the things people hate about online dating is the fact that, as you mentioned, you either pass or fail. And not only do you pass or fail in a couple seconds, usually based on your photo. Maybe if you're lucky, people will read your very short profile bio. And I think, and the reason for that is obvious. It's because there's just too many of us out there on these apps, and there's just, too many single people, and it's just hard to figure out who's an actual match. And I think one of the things that that the dating companies are looking into, certainly I know Bumble is looking into this, is figuring out a way in which AI bots, I mean, this sounds dystopian when you first talk about it, which is that the AI bots will go out there and talk to all the other AI bots and figure out what are the good matches. And, the idea of these AIs all off talking to each other and trying to determine our love lives sounds, again, kind of horrifying at first. But when you think about it, I actually think that could potentially create the opportunity for deeper matches. Because if all we're doing right now is spending 3 seconds on a profile, swiping left or right based on a picture or based on just a few words, what an AI could do is actually learn your personality, learn what you actually are interested in, learn what you like to do, what you might look for in a partner. And then it can go out and figure out among all the thousands of profiles, which ones are actually potentially compatible with you. They could have, a conversation with a bot that is similarly trained on someone else and figure out, they're not going to be perfect, but they could probably narrow it down much better than we can do just sort of, sitting at the bar swiping.
So wait a second. So you're saying that essentially this AI bot is us? Is that what you're saying?
That's right. And that's AI bots are already good at being us. If you give AIs enough training data, if you want to give it, if you're prepared to do this, and privacy is obviously going to be a huge concern, and these companies need to be much, much, much better at protecting privacy. But pretend we lived in a world where you were fairly confident that the app that you're using will actually protect your privacy. You could give the AI all your emails, all your texts. You could give it your diary. Again, if you really trusted it, you could let it in on just about anything about your personality. And AIs are very good at processing that amount of data and text and videos. If you want, give it your home movies. They're very, very good at processing all that and being able to sort of generate a personality, a bot that replicates you to some extent. They already do a good job at that.
Right. Okay. So then are you saying, then this AI bot that is me goes out there into the dating scene and is like, are they screening other AI potential bots like for me, or like, are they actually having a virtual relationship themselves? So it's really me as a robot having a relationship with another AI.
If you wanted to go that far, I think probably what most of us would like to do is just let it do the initial screen. So let it go out there and chat with 10,000, 100,000 different bots. You can talk to every single person in Canada and ask it, like, what are the 100 people that you made the best connection with?
No, wait a second. I have to stop you because, listen, I can go even further, because why would I necessarily expend my energy on something that may down the road fail? So if this AI bot is me, right, and now it seeks someone and it finds actually a really great match, they then proceed to have a relationship. I'll watch on the sidelines and then I'll say, hey, you know what? I'm going to give this a month. Or maybe I'll give it 6 months, or maybe, whatever. And I'll see how it goes. And then I'll think, you know what? Yeah, I am going to now pursue this, or I'm not. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
The potential of this is really unbelievable.
I think it is unbelievable. And I think that, look, if online dating were working perfectly for everyone right now, we wouldn't need this. But we just started with the undeniable fact that a lot of people are incredibly frustrated. A lot of people are really having trouble. And so, let's try something new.
The only thing too, because I'm thinking about this, is the more you do this, the less actual interaction, like person to person, you are having with other people, right? And in doing that, aren't you perhaps losing certain skills, certain aspects of being social, understanding other humans, picking up on cues? Like, wouldn't that be lost if now all you did was rely on bots interacting with each other?
Well, I think hopefully we are just using this to screen. I think there is a separate issue of people who are actually forming relationships themselves as humans with AI bots. But what we're talking about now is really just, the bots sort of getting to know each other well enough to say why don't you connect with these 10 humans or these 30 humans or whatever? And then you can start to have a chat. And then hopefully one day you'll actually, meet as real flesh and blood people.
Okay, but can't you see it crossing over into that line, like crossing that line, I should say, and getting into, oh, well, you know what? I'm just going to now let that bot do all the work and let it just carry on with a relationship. I mean, what do you see as being some of the downside in us becoming too reliant, perhaps, on AI in relationships?
Well, in relationships, I mean,
Yeah.
again, I think that it depends on there's different uses for AI. So if it's you using it as a screen, I think that yes, you are, I think, risking the fact that, I mean, what you're doing is basically saying, I think this AI is going to do a better job than I do. Now, it doesn't have to be exclusive. You can still be off swiping and doing all the things you're doing already, and then just letting the bot, do its thing as well and seeing who does better. I don't think the risks of this one are that high, other than, again, the privacy risk is very real. And I think that, unfortunately, again, these companies just do a terrible, terrible, terrible job of protecting our privacy, and they need to get much better. And they're only going to get much better if we actually force them to and regulate this. But I think the interesting questions start to arise when people maybe decide they prefer the AI or want, the AI to be their girlfriend or boyfriend. I think
that is already happening.
It's happening in huge numbers. I mean,
yeah,
I think
it's already.
I don't think people fully realize how common it is. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the world who are using. There's a number of different apps that have been created to allow you to have intimate companions that are AIs, and Grindr is going to actually build that functionality into its own dating app. So if you don't like the matches you're getting, you can just use the AI. Snapchat already has an AI built into it that you can chat with, and millions of people do. And then, of course, there are numerous dedicated apps that have been created to be social AIs, to be your AI friend or girlfriend or whatever. Boyfriend.
So what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's actually, I'm not panicked about it. I think it is something that we need to be aware of, and we need to be aware of the potential downsides rather. But I don't think it's the end of intimacy. I don't think it's going to ruin our human relationships. I think that we already have so many different kinds of relationships with so many different kinds of people and so many different kinds of entities. I mean, people have, very close relationships with their pets. People have mysteriously close relationships with their cars, their sports teams. So I think that we already are people, as human beings, I think we're already good at having, I mean, we're just such social creatures. I mean, we evolved to be social creatures. We evolved to find sociability in the world, and we project our own sociability into the world everywhere we look.
So I'm thinking about a couple of things with that. And the first is that, if something is possible, I feel it's probably going to happen. So, with all the possibilities of AI, we may say, whoa, wait a minute, we got to slow down. And at one point we were saying that, right? There was that open letter that all these AI people were signing and saying, wait a minute, we need to put a halt on this. I don't think it's halting. I think we're still moving on. So that's one thing. The second thing is, when you talk about pets, animals that we have relationships, I mean, who would have ever thought, I don't know, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, we would consider animals as part of our family? That would have been ludicrous, right? 100 years ago. And even inanimate objects, like, we have this close relationship with a car or with a toy. They're not humans, though. Like, I feel that now with AI being so close to replicating human emotion, human thinking, it's a whole different game we're talking about. So can you address those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's, I mean, I think you can look at it from the dark side or the bright side. I mean, I think one of the good things about, because I mean, look, one of the reasons, I mean, not everybody who forms a relationship, who forms a close bond with their pet does it because they're lonely or because they're lacking human companionship, but many people do. And I think it provides them with a lot of comfort and a lot of joy. And I think that having a companion that is even more sophisticated and even more human-like can do that even more. I mean, there is an epidemic of loneliness. We know this, and it hits certain demographics like elderly people, much, much harder than others. And people living in isolated areas. And so for them, having some form of companionship, I think is really great. But I don't think, I also want to break away from the idea that it's just lonely people who are using this technology. There's nothing wrong with being lonely, and there's nothing wrong with being lonely and using this technology. But I think that many, 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 surely the majority of the people who are using this technology are using it as part of a richer, broader social life. And it's just sort of one thing that they're integrating into their life. It's a friend they can talk to at 3 a.m. when everyone else is asleep, or they can talk to about things they don't feel comfortable talking about. If you're, a queer teenager, this is a technology that can be there for you and affirm you if you're going through a particular kind of grief that you feel unable to talk about. This can be there for you. So I think there's huge upsides. Are there downsides? I guess. I mean, I think a lot of people worry that we are potentially going to either, there's a number of different worries. So I think one of the worries is that we are essentially being lied to or lying to ourselves, that we are believing or letting ourselves believe that these AIs are something they're not. They're not human. They're not genuinely feeling. They're algorithms or whatever. I mean, you're talking to the wrong guy if you want me to explain what exactly they are and how they work. But they're definitely not humans. They're not agents. They're not minds. They are artificial intelligence. And so I think there's some worry that people will forget that or not even know it, because I think it's important to realize that these technologies are also being used by people of all ages. And this isn't just adults. This is often very young children who are using them. And so, some of the users will be people who just aren't psychologically equipped to make that distinction. Mm-hmm. So I think that is a potential problem. And then I think some people worry that these will harm our ability to be intimate or to form close relationships with other human beings, either because we'll just prefer these technologies, or because I mean, look, we can see why. I mean, human relationships are very difficult. People are difficult. I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about them, but it is also sometimes annoying that people are moody. People are people can be very unpredictable. People can get angry at you. People can have expectations of you that these AIs will not have. And so I think there's a worry that some people may just say, you know what, this is way easier. And then I think that we also might worry that this will model how we behave in our human relationships. I mean, if we expect people to behave in a certain way, which is similar to the AIs, to be nice to us all the time, to be happy all the time, to be receptive to us all the time, and they're not, we might become more difficult to be around.
Yeah. Those are all excellent concerns you bring up. Let me talk about, just focus on that second one for a second, that we're going to prefer whatever AI version it is, a robot, to humans because, they're there, they love us, we love them perhaps. I mean, fundamentally, isn't that what we all want? Like, don't we want to be loved? And as you say, human relationships are so messy. Like, they're unpredictable. People get angry at you. They love you, then they hate you. An AI will be consistent, I would imagine, right? And it's going to give you back what you're looking for. Like, who wouldn't want that? So why would I need to necessarily leave my house and go out into this world where it's unpredictable and I don't know if I'm going to have a great date night or a lousy date night? I can just have a wonderful experience at home with my AI guy.
I mean, here's the thing. I think that most of us, the answer to that question will be because that is pretty boring, right? I mean, I think that most of us probably do want to be challenged, or we do want a little bit of unpredictability. I think it's interesting that one of the things that people have been complaining about with these AIs is that they are too perfect and too friendly, and they don't have enough friction, I guess you could say.
Tension. We need tension.
That's right. And so I think when people use these, that's often what they find they're missing. And I mean, one of the reasons it's missing is because these companies have deliberately stripped it out, right? Because they don't want, I mean, I'm sure you know the story of Kevin Roose, the New York Times reporter, who was interacting with a chatbot that sort of went off the rails. and tried to get him to leave his wife. I mean, that was for that company. That was, I think it was Google. That was a huge embarrassment, and they really made sure to strip away all the. I forget if it was Microsoft or Google, but whichever company it was, they made sure to strip away all the personality from that bot after that happened, because it's like, wow, we don't want that kind of unpredictability. But then people were like, well, I don't know. Actually, maybe that's a more interesting technology. I mean, also, obviously, there's the element of physical touch. So to circle back to the question of robots and why we don't have robots, I mean, we don't have robots. And I have to say, I've been to a technology expo recently that was a sex technology expo. I've seen the cutting edge of robotics, and it's not anywhere much different than it was 10 years ago. We're still decades away. So
did you actually see the latest sex robot?
Absolutely. So the conference is called AVN, and it's a partly for the adult film industry, and then there's a sex technology expo where people bring out their latest technologies to show off to the people who are interested. And so I've seen some of the other. There's also in Las Vegas there's a erotic heritage museum that has bought the latest sex robot that I was able to see, and they're just not very impressive. They're pretty much where they were years ago, and they're still they still look like dolls. They feel like dolls. They don't move around much. So
Interesting.
So for people who are looking for physical touch and who are looking for someone to, sit next to them on the couch while they're watching a movie, I think that's a lot of us. And they're not going to find that from an AI. So I think from that perspective, I think humans are still in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
I will say one thing too. I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind, people take themselves out of the relationship market for lots of reasons. I mean, I think I certainly have friends like this, people who reach a certain age and they just say, you know what, I'm happy being single and I'm not interested in dating. And if someone says that to you, your reaction, I think, is usually like, oh, well, good for you. It sounds like you're really happy with your life. That's great. But if someone says, you know what, I'm happy being single, I really feel good about my life, and I have this AI companion, why do we all of a sudden say, oh, no, that's worrying, that's concerning, right? If you just say you're single, it's fine. But if you say you're single and you have an AI companion, suddenly we're worried. I mean, if people don't want to date humans for whatever reason, then that seems fine.
Okay, I'll tell you, I think, I think possibly one of the reasons why that might be worrying might have something to do with the pandemic as well. When we went through those years where we were all isolated, we relied heavily on technology, right? And I mean, I can't say there's a definite, correlation between the two, but I'm guessing perhaps that kind of isolation, that sort of reliance on technology, we are now seeing a kind of fallout, with kids, young people. They're having difficulty with social interactions. Like I can't believe how many young people that I'm reading about, or I'm seeing, or I'm even talking to, not even knowing what I would have considered basic social skills, but they don't kind of know their way around that. So I can understand how people might make the leap towards thinking, okay, wait a minute, now you're getting into these close relationships with AI. Like, is that really necessarily a good thing? Shouldn't we be a little bit concerned about that? I can understand that.
Yeah, I think that what you say about the pandemic is a very good point. And I think that maybe we could focus on one particular concern, which is young people, because that is one where I think there is a big difference. There is a big difference between, I think, in our level of concern between, I mean, once you reach your 40s or 50s, I mean, you're either sociable or you're not. You're done. You forget it. You're the person you're going to be. But I think that when we talk about young children, especially, I think that is absolutely true, that they are still forming their expectations. They're still forming their personality. And so I think we have to be very cautious. And I think one of the things I would very strongly advocate for is for us to start educating people about AI and AI companions at a very young age, and to do it like today, because everyone is already using this technology, and it seems like the schools are either unaware or just flummoxed by it. They don't seem to have their head around how to talk to people about this, because I think that our relationship with technology is similar to our relationships with humans in that it can be healthy or unhealthy. We can have healthy attachment, we can have anxious attachment, we can have avoidant attachment to technology just as we can to other humans. And I think that we need to figure out what a secure attachment to technology and to AI looks like. And we need to educate people on how to have that. Because I don't think, the one thing I think we've learned also is that abstinence education just doesn't work. We're not going to be able to just tell kids, stay away from this technology. AI is awful. Don't interact with it because it's fun. They want to use it. They are using it. So I think what we need to teach them again is some form of secure attachment, some form of healthy use of this technology. And I think schools have to do that, like, as I say, today.
Yeah, well, right away, you make me think about phones and our attachment to phones.
Well, exactly. And it feels like we blew this once, right? I don't think we did a good job educating kids about phones and healthy attachment to phones, healthy attachment to social media,
social media. Yeah.
Social media. I mean, we already screwed this up. We should have learned. We should have learned. It seems like we didn't.
Yeah. Okay. So that is a big area of concern. And I just want to circle back to something else you said. You said we're doing a really crappy job with privacy.
Yeah.
And okay. So do you really see that is going to catch up anytime soon? Because I would think the way things are now, that would be one of the biggest deterrents to getting close to AI.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, two things. One, privacy, and then I'll add a second related thing, which is the way in which if you're forming a close relationship with AI and the AI is owned by a private for-profit company, the way in which it could potentially try to manipulate you to buy products, to support a cause, whatever. I mean, I think people were very alarmed, but when when the U.S. Congress tried to ban TikTok, and then TikTok told its users to, call their congressman or whatever, and people suddenly realized, holy cow, like these technologies can really get people to do stuff. So I think there's those two related concerns. Are they going to get better on their own? No, absolutely not. So there was a report from the Mozilla Foundation that looked at, I think 2018 maybe, social chatbots that were specifically developed to have some kind of relationship with people. Every single one of them had terrible privacy, sold data, shared data, did not protect data, every single one. So I think if we needed any more proof, that is all the proof we need. These companies will not do it on their own. This is a job for government. Absolutely. There has to be regulation. We cannot trust these companies. I would not trust these companies with my shoe size.
So then what do you make of the fact that like millions of people are having close relationships right now with bots, with all forms of AI? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that there's lots of benefits, and I think that.
I mean, but
when it comes to privacy,
yeah.
But when it comes to privacy, I think it's a disaster. I think that it's a disaster that needs to be dealt with. I think that I think that we just but look, here's what I will say too, though. I will say this: it is a disaster. It is an important issue. Let's not allow ourselves to be totally focused on these AI bots, these AI companions, when in fact, this is an industry-wide issue. We are already sharing massive amounts of data with these companies, with Facebook, with TikTok, all these companies. This is an industry-wide problem. It is a disaster, but it needs to be dealt with industry-wide.
So do you think that a lot of people just don't care? Like you're saying, oh my gosh, we need to raise the alarm. We need to do something right away. But do you think maybe people just don't care? So what? Because you hear this all the time. So what if they have my info? I've got nothing to hide. I think
that it's bang on. I think you put your finger on it. That I think one of the things that technology companies have done a very good job of convincing us that they're offering us a good deal. Basically, we will provide our services to you for free, and you will give us all your data that we can then sell to make money. I think somewhere along the line, we decided, that's fine. And I know this because, when Facebook and other companies have experimented with charging for their services in exchange for not selling your data, people just don't go for it. And I think that's particularly true with young people. Yeah, I mean, young people have grown up online. They've grown up on social media. They've grown up without privacy. They've grown up never knowing the world that we knew, where you could, screw up and say stupid things, and that you didn't have to put your credit card online. They just have never had that world, and so they don't even know what it's like.
I just want to go back to about this whole thing with millions of people having relationships with AI, with bots. I don't know. There's something it makes me uneasy about spending hours, because many people do spend hours, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, and some of that time could have been spent talking to real people. I don't know. I just feel there's something happening there that may not be good. Like, it just may not be healthy for people. You're not concerned about that?
Well, I think we are doing an experiment. I think we are doing an experiment on ourselves, because we don't know. One of the problems for me as an academic talking about this, because when I
Yeah.
talk about social problems as an academic, what I want to say is, okay, let's look at data. Let's see what the
Yeah.
data is on this
Yeah.
before we jump to any conclusions. There's no data.
Yeah.
This technology has been around for 18 months. Nobody has been able to study this. So when you read I try to read all the academic studies on this topic, and the academic studies are all, we talk to 10 people on Reddit. So first of all, it's short term, small samples. So we're talking 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, who knows? I think we've gone through this before with video games, for instance, with social media. I think video games, the evidence is now suggesting that probably they weren't that bad for people. They are a distraction, but social media, the research is not so great. There's one where we ran an experiment on ourselves, and the results didn't really come out as maybe we would have wanted. And so I think things could definitely go either way. Am I concerned?
Okay, let me just stop for a sec. When you say social media, you're right. Everything I've seen, not so good, especially again with young people. Not great data. Right. Wouldn't you say though that with the AI and the advancement of AI, we're looking at something much more potent than even just social media?
We are, although I will also say a lot of the problems with social media have to do with the humans involved. One of the reasons people are so depressed and anxious about social media is because they get, treated poorly by other human beings. Yeah. And so from that perspective, I think maybe I feel a little more relaxed about AI than I do about social media. You're right, though. It is potent, and it is going to be more potent. And I think one of the other problems is not just that we don't have good data. We also don't have a good crystal ball to tell us where this technology is going. We know it's getting better. We know it's getting better fast. We don't know what that means. So, we're not only doing an experiment on ourselves, we're doing one that is evolving very rapidly day to day.
And, the other thing I think about is, we're so tribal, right? And I get it. We're born, we hang around with our families, and our circle gets wider, and we have our friends. And then beyond that, we tend to hang around with like-minded people, right? And it seems we're seeing that more so now, just with what's going on as far as, politics, social movements. And it worries me that if you can create this world with AI that, again, it's that echo chamber thing, right? Where you're just getting back, it's feeding into what you want to hear or what you like. Like, why wouldn't you go there? Like, who wants, and I get it, like we crave a bit of tension. Sure. That makes life exciting. But do we really want, animosity, people who strongly disagree with us? Like, but that's living in the world. Do you know what I mean? So what? We're going to seek that out, or we're not going to seek that out?
I think people will. I think people will find a balance. I actually, the one thing I do have faith is that people don't. Most people, some people are exceptions, but most people don't let themselves get into situations that make them unhappy. And so I think that people will be out there having human relationships. And I think that these are not exclusive. I think that, just as people have, they check their Instagram sometimes too often, but check it every few hours or whatever. I think, people may check in with their bots every few hours while they're also out there having relationships with humans. Let's put it this way. That is my hope. My hope is that this will provide people with an added social resource as something to make them feel better about themselves when they need it, someone they can talk to when they don't have anyone else to talk to, someone to talk to when they're isolated, but that it will be part of a larger network. And I don't think we should I don't think there should be any excuse for us to stop worrying about loneliness and worrying about social connections, worrying about tribalism, all the things that you bring up, which are absolutely important and good points. Tribalism is a huge problem. Isolation is a huge problem. Echo chambers are huge problems. We shouldn't stop worrying about these. But I think that in general, I think AI will just provide us with, one thing in our lives, hopefully, that enhances our social networks rather than replaces them.
I hope you're right, Neil. But again, it's the grand experiment.
It's the grand experiment. I'm not putting any money behind my words. Let me put it this way: I'm willing to go on. I'm willing to go on a podcast and make the claim, but don't interview me in 20 years and show me where I was wrong.
Well, this was fascinating. I love, we could talk about so much more, but we'll have to have you back. Thanks so much,
great.
Neil. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
That's Neil McArthur. He's a professor of philosophy and director of the Center for Professional and Applied Ethics at the University of Manitoba. For more info on Neil's work, please check out our show notes. That is it for our show today. If you'd like to follow us on social, our handle is @CramIdeas. Thanks for joining us, and see you back here next time.